Hello, hello, welcome to Season 5 of How to Play D&D, the explainer podcast with one experienced dungeon master and one failed script writer to discuss D&D topics. My name is Kinsey, and my illustrious guest this week is Sean Smith. Hello, Sean.
Hello, Connor.
Hello. Thanks for joining us again. Obviously in the same attire as we block film these, but still looking good from last time.
No, what I've actually done, I've changed everything, estimating what I'm going to be wearing in the appropriate delay between the two recordings. So
yes, perfect.
It was an extenuating circumstance.
I'm actually wearing the same thing, but I've changed. So I've come out of this and then put it back on, just so there's continuity between each episode. I basically want to give the impression that I don't wash, and I hope that's coming through.
I think it's important to have rituals like this. Like, without being able to do this sort of thing, it's quite, I don't know, you almost lose the real touch.
Yeah, and, my girlfriend can't say that I'm not consistent with anything, if not persistent by doing such a horrible task. I live every day like it's my last. Anyway, what's the... I'm going to skip that. This season, we are doing things slightly different. Our guests have selected an enemy from a list that I've supplied, and they are going to educate us as to why we should use these creatures. And of course, I will interrogate. So what is the creature that you're bringing to the table today?
So today it is the single best enemy across the entirety of all levels of D&D, and that is the skeleton, often called a skeleton by losers.
Okay, perfect. Let's get to it. Okay, so today's episode is skeletons. Other than cheese, skeletons are the second worst thing to be outside of your body that should really be in it. Sean Smith, what is the likelihood of me punching my way through 815 glass doors with only jars of lemon curd for gloves? What am I doing?
What's the possibility of it? I'd say that we're probably down to about like a 1 in 6 chance in this case here, and I imagine it's quite likely that this is probably some form of either elaborate bet or more likely a ritual to summon a lemon.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong. It's a bet that I could summon a lemon. So there we go. Once again, logic has overthrown my lemon curd punching days. To the real questions then, I'm treating this as a bit like Room 101, where you sell me the idea of the skeleton, but this time, unlike Room 101, is why we should keep it rather than get rid of it. Why did you pick skeletons?
So skeletons are both very, very common in that most people have them. And beyond that, they're also sufficiently weird at the same time that it fits in pretty much whatever situation you're doing. If you're doing something high fantasy, if you're doing something gothic horror, even if you're doing something sci-fi, it fits. If you cannot decide what to use, you should use a skeleton. Fun fact, because there are always pregnant people, the average number of skeletons in the world is higher than 1 per person.
That is actually terrifying. That definitely beats my fact at the end of this episode. So, and you can probably guess my fact based on if you've got a fact that strong. Okay, what kind of stats does a skeleton have?
So, almost always, skeletons tend to be, for the most part, really quite low. So they tend to have really quite like moderate armor. They tend to be quite weak hitting. There's a little bit amongst them which kind of gives them a little bit of play that you quite often don't get in low levels before, because you can have resistances to certain types of damage that often only crop up when you've got something strong enough that needs to be hit with magic or with something else. The other place you can kind of play with this is swarms. And so obviously I do recommend a skeleton swarm soon. But the fact that you can't really stab a skeleton and cause it that much harm, but you can smash it with a big hammer, really gives you quite a lot of play in that. And they're similarly sufficiently low level that you can just bulk them up in ridiculous numbers to still make an interesting situation. They kind of like, if you're running things at like tier 2 or 3 where you've got people running around being able to cast fireball all over the time, is it really worth it? They're so simple you could kill them in a single hit, but they're basically like double difficult terrain where you've kind of got to run through this like horrible mass of grapply bone.
And obviously, we're talking about the basic skeleton here across like all of the versions of D&D, essentially. But there are variants, right? If you look in any of the monster manuals, they do get higher. They do have other abilities. There's a range there. Is that right?
Yes, quite often you're also going to get. I think there's still the Minotaur skeleton. I haven't looked at the 24 version of the monster manual, but quite often you're going to get things that are like mid to high tier, kind of like spin them up, spread them out. But then you do also get quite a few other enemies that are skeletal in appearance. And so I think you can kind of almost like key them together. One of my absolute favorites is to have something that's basically just some like slightly higher undead that just happens to have see-through skin, and so you can only see a skeleton, but it's not a skeleton. And you've got quite a range of stuff that you can kind of pick out.
That's good. I like that a lot, actually. How does a DM use a skeleton in their game?
So for the most part, you can kind of use them both as a way of actively being spooky. So having something that objectively looks like it's deeply unsettling. They can either be like quite simply like naturally occurring, as sort of like corrupted grave sites and things of the sort. You could even have a lot of D&D players I know really love the Dark Souls video games, and there is a famously skeleton-heavy section very early on in one of those games where turns out the skeletons keep getting back up no matter how many times you kill them. So you can always have fun little things like that. But also they kind of make perfect sense, because if you're dealing with like a high-level evil character, skeletons are a remarkably good thing to use as working around the house. They follow instructions directly. You don't need to go into quite as much like complex construction issues as you would with like a golem or something similar, and they don't have that horrible rotting meat smell that you get with zombies. All in all, they're pretty much perfect.
Yeah, we've actually done that in my campaign where I kind of Easter egged a character from a previous campaign. That character, like a player character, was just an NPC in the kind of like, oh, and you notice them in a prison chained up. There's a reason why they're chained up. Don't take the tape off of their mouth, because they're a crazy powerful necromancer. And they just thought it was literally just to kind of be like a nod back to a previous thing, and they decided to unleash that necromancer by opening his mouth, setting him free, thinking they're doing the right thing. And then we managed. They were in a prison full of undead, and so I then luckily managed to. He was like, "Well, I'm taking all of these people and I'm getting out of here. I won't kill you because you just released me, but you were all good guys. I'm actually a really bad guy." And so luckily we actually made by chance a BBG, and we got that player back to on a call in Discord to play the final boss battle for that part of the campaign, and they had no idea, but it was on them. It wasn't written to be happening, So there can be so much fun with skeletons. I think I'm more inclined to use skeletons now. I'm more inclined. Can you give an example of when you used or encountered a skeleton?
Yeah, so almost always, especially if I'm doing something like within a town, a really good way of having something that's like an active threat that obviously the heroes need to step up to. There's a lot of like complicated ethics around how many monstrous humanoids you can destroy. However, skeletons as mindless undead that have been constructed by evil magics, and to some extent demons and the like, are very easy to, if you're just suddenly like the village is being attacked. Can you save it right now, please? This is the time to do a fight. Skeletons are just perfect for doing that. And they're also like, if you were in real life and you were walking down the road and there was a skeleton following you, it would be fucking terrifying.
It was. It really would.
And as such, it makes sense for why all of the villagers are running away. And so it's really easy to, and like especially for a new DM, to be thinking about, okay, well, how would an average person react to seeing a thing that is directly monstrous in this same way, but also it not then immediately ruin your game by having oh no, I've accidentally sent the Tarask because I needed something that people could be like, well, this is definitely safe to fight.
Yeah.
So throw them in all your towns is what I say. Most towns have a graveyard, in fact.
So yeah, no excuse not to do it for new DMs. Really, always the opportunity.
Exactly.
Last question then: what's your least favorite enemy in D&D?
Of all time.
What's the one where you're playing? I mean, I guess more so as a player, because as a DM, you're in control of putting those enemies, right? But as a player, was it challenging, or do you go, I just really don't like how the mechanics of this works? I don't, it's completely open as to what you don't like the most.
To some extent, I think there's quite a lot of things where even the bad ones, you can kind of still have a certain amount of fun with them. But I think I'm often bored when there's a weak dragon. And especially from like 3rd edition onwards, they were like, right, we want to make sure there's a dragon for every level. And I do think that you should have like weird draconic-y monsters, or like wyverns or wyverns, or however you're using words, are quite fun, or like big horrible crocodile monsters. But to have a tiny little dragon when they're this just like ancient majestic things, and of course they will be young, but just seeing the babies of them, it takes a lot of the punch out. It's not a game about like beating up tiny babies, and it shouldn't be.
That's totally. I didn't think about it that way. But the summary, like, it's I had the same thing previously interviewing someone here, where I had the same thing for a beholder, and it wasn't as if I don't like beholders. That same kind of analogy of like the way they've been used when I've played, you either think they've actually just thrown this in, there's actually no way we could beat it, and it's more of a case of they want you to see a beholder. Or it's a case of they put it in, it should be a challenge, but actually it's been very half-assed and it wasn't as challenging as it should be. I have not experienced as a player a middle ground where you go, this was really challenging, but it lived up to what a beholder should be. And I've often had that with a dragon, where you're in a fight with a dragon, but it just doesn't fly. And you're thinking, that's arguably half of why you would use one, is to like mix up what you're...
Yeah, exactly.
You could fight skeletons on the ground. When there's a dragon, I expect it to be swooping around at some point, and
it's not even that you're going to have players going, oh, how can they fly? It's like they famously got wings.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I totally agree. But the baby analogy makes a lot of sense as well, as to unless there's some kind of like trap there, like you said, it makes sense that I think I'm going to go rescue this thing. Oh, mummy dragon's there. There's kind of ways around it, I suppose, but most of the time, I think you're right. It's I guess it's more down to not the enemy, but how it's used.
No, exactly.
Cool. Before we outro, would you like to introduce yourself? I know we did a podcast previously where I didn't do that, but this is more of a case of this is literally you bringing to the table a bit of your own bias, I suppose, with the enemy. Would you like to talk about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Sean F. Smith. I'm a games designer and an editor, and I can help you with both. And primarily, although I started role-playing back in the 2000s properly, previously to that was sort of doing adjacent stuff when my best friend brought the fighting fantasy game book, Warlock of Firetal Mountain, into school, and we would all sit around the table playing that, invariably always dying at the vampire. As an adult, I have since learned if you meet the vampire, you've gone the wrong way and you can never win. So that probably set up the obsession with crypts. But I run a lot of horror games, so quite a lot of like Cthulhu adjacent things. I run quite a lot of old school role playing, and having a monster that it makes sense to have hundreds of thousands of them at any given point that don't all have to have separate names. Because I do quite like pulling on the heartstrings whenever a player kills a goblin and another goblin goes, "Oh, David!" And it's more fun then if you get the emotional crunch. If sometimes you can also just be like, "Here is a literal faceless horde of lads," and that's
nice.
where I'm coming from, and in fact where everybody should go to as well.
Nice, thank you very much. Well, today's adventure has sadly come to a close. We are back again next week with the topic: if I brush my teeth, am I touching my skeleton? Do you know the answer?
I do know the answer. You are not. So the problem is that. Did you know the answer?
I knew the answer.
Teeth. Yeah, teeth are made from hard skin, not soft bone. So yeah.
There we go. Okay, and as always, thank you for tuning in. And if you'd like to join on D&D action, then please follow us on Instagram at How to Play D&D, or check out the link in our bio to join our Discord server. We'll also put your links, if you send them over, in the bio in the podcast chat as well, for people to get involved in what you do.
I shall send them by skeleton messenger.
Yes, please.
Maybe a skeletal pigeon, although I fear that might not fly very well.
I would 100% need that as a familiar if that was a thing. I've been Connor Kinsey.
I've been Sean Smith.
Good day.